Hey everybody, what's up? Mike here. Okay, so today's the day. We're doing the a part two of Polyphia Ego Death featuring Steve Vai. Just some background in case this is your first time catching me doing this. So here's the deal with this tune. I reacted to it last week, and it blew my mind so much, and I had like such a musical orgasm that like I could not concentrate. I couldn't focus on the analysis, the musical analysis that I usually do. So I promised y'all that I would do that this week, and here we are today. So this is not really a proper reaction. If you want to see my initial reaction, I'll put a link to that up top and in the description and stuff. But this is, we're going to do a deep dive today. This is the full-on musical analysis for Polyphia Ego Death, featuring none other than Steve Vai. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button below, somewhere down here, I can never tell where. Ring the bell to get notified when I post a new video. Give the video a like, thumbs up please, and leave a comment and let me know what you think of this. If any other musicians who are watching this want to chime in for their input, for their own analysis in the comments, please do so. And if you want to support the channel, I'll leave links to my PayPal and my Bandcamps in case you want to get my music. And if you want to support the channel monetarily, that's great. I do need to get a better camera eventually. So if you want to help out with that, you can donate to my PayPal or get one of my records, and that'd be great. And if not, just the fact that you're being here and watching this and commenting is cool too. So y'all are awesome, and I appreciate y'all. So yeah, before we get started, I have done a little bit of research into this tune, and by research I mean I went over to Doug Halverin's channel because Doug has really good ears, and I don't, in terms of being able to tell what key this is in. So I have since learned from Doug, thank you Doug, that this tune is in the key of D minor, and it's basically a 1 minor, flat 7, flat 6, and then dominant 5 chord progression. So just a descending minor line essentially. And the whole tune is like based around this kind of progression, and it's kind of like building up in themes and stuff. So we're going to take a look at it. I'm going to be more analyzing this from like an arrangement perspective, and less of like a musical harmony thing, because admittedly telling harmony by ear is not my strong point. But I'm going to be talking about more about like things like, you know, how the band arranges it, certain figures they're doing, phrasing for the guitar playing, that sort of thing. I'll definitely be analyzing the hell out of Steve Vai's solo. And yeah, so without further ado, here is Polyphia Ego Death featuring Steve Vai. Let's analyze this. Let's go. Okay, yeah. So what's going on here is Tim's got this riff, the bum bum ba ba da ba da bum bum, and basically what he's doing is he's repeating that riff over the 1 flat 7 flat 6 5 chord progression that I mentioned earlier. In the key of D, those chords are D minor, C major, B flat, and A or A7 probably, because the 5 is usually dominant. And dominant, by dominant, I mean that's a major chord with a flat 7. So the difference between a flat 7 and a major 7, right? If we're in the key of D, okay, your flat 7, or even if we look at the chord of A7, right? So you've got A, your root, C sharp, your major third, E, your fifth, and then G, which is your flat 7. A major 7 would be a half step up, semitone up to G sharp. But because it's G, the 7 is now what we call a flat. And so when you have a flat 7 with a major chord, that forms what we call a dominant 5 chord. And that 7, that flat 7, that G in the A chord, is really what makes the chord sound dominant, by which we mean it's a very strong chord, and it wants to lead you back to your 1 chord, your D minor, which it does. So Tim is just repeating this riff. He's doing a lot of octaves. I think there's like 1 double stop harmony in there, but it's mostly octaves. You can hear a lot of like R&B, jazz influence. Very smooth. Kind of reminds me of something that Curtis Mayfield would play. If you guys don't know Curtis Mayfield and like the origins of like modern R&B in the 60s, you need to go check him out. He was one of Jimi Hendrix's big influences, and I know Tim is a big fan of Jimi Hendrix, so I wonder if he looked into a little bit of Curtis Mayfield for this. So that's just their we're 16 seconds into this, and already I've said a lot. But hey, this is what analysis is about. If you don't like in-depth analysis, go to another channel. Alright, so let's keep going. And yeah, the piano here is what's causing, is what's creating that 1, flat 7, flat 6, dominant 5 chord progression. Now the bass is going to add to it. Synths. Yeah, it's that always throws me off, that little synth bass thing where it continues the melody. It's so random. And you can hear there's a synth in the background which sounds like a pad or a string pad. It's just holding the D, the tonic, the high tonic up. Very high up, and it's basically like a pedal point to add tension. Check it out. Okay, the riff. The crazy Tim Henson Polyphia riff. So basically, it's the same idea. Tim has, what they've sort of done is they've taken this idea of playing the same riff over these descending chords, right? That we talked about earlier. And so you start off very simple, very, chill, R&B-like. Now we're going to something really, really, really percussive. And it's very, very much more rhythmically intricate. There's a lot of string muting going on here. There's a lot of tapping, a lot of harmonics. I mean, standard Polyphia stuff. But what's really cool is the rhythm. I hear a lot of Latin rhythms in this. And in my head, I can almost hear like a bit of like something like a Tresillo over top this. I don't think that's probably not the group that they're actually using. But I hear a lot of Latin grooves and percussions in terms of just the overall flow and rhythmic ideas they're going for. And when Tim is making this riff, he's doing a lot of percussive stuff in harmonics, right? But if you listen to the riff, he's outlining the chords, right? The D minor, the C, the B flat, the A7 in the riff. He's basically sort of breaking up or arpeggiating the chords and focusing on chord tones in order to make the melody really strong. He's emphasizing, like when you do this, you tend to want, and I've talked about this on the channel before, you tend to want to like emphasize the strong notes in your chord, either your major third or your root, maybe the flat 7 in the case of, the A7, the dominant 5 chord there. But yeah, he's basically sort of outlining the strong sort of tone centers in the chords, the ones that our ears gravitate towards, like the major 7, the root, maybe even the 5th sometimes. But yeah, check it out. D minor. Now he's outlining C major. He's outlining B flat. Now he's outlining A7. And I hear a little bit of a harmonic minor in this little riff that he does here, which makes a lot of sense because you can play the harmonic minor scale of your 5 chord, which would be a harmonic minor in this case, over your A7. Or rather, no, what am I saying? You can play the Phrygian dominant mode of your 5 chords, so A Phrygian in this case, which is a mode of D harmonic minor. Blah. My theory brain got mixed up today. But this is basically what Tim is doing. I'll point it out when we get to the 5 chord. Yeah, that right there sounds like A Phrygian to my ears. There. Accents, the drums come in. Really, Clay Ashelman is emphasizing the strong beats, the bop bop, right? Which is where the heart of the groove really is here. And he's doing a lot of intricate stuff on the cymbals to create the groove to start off with, playing very light. Between the hi-hats and the cymbals. I very much hear a Latin influence here. Okay, so this section here is cool. So they're building off of the percussive riff that Tim has made. You can hear some overdubs of some bluesy kind of fills over on this side of the headphones. And then when the bass and the drums come in, now Clay is adding the bass drum, the snare, and it's almost creating like a. I hear it as like a combo between like a Latin groove and like a halftime kind of groove with the snare. I'll explain what I mean by that, right? So he's doing da 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 da, right? And that's kind of halftime because in my head, right, Tresillo would be more like which could also work over this, right? But Clay is, I'm almost hearing like a halftime kind of Tresillo kind of groove, a halftime Latin kind of groove over this, basically. And of course, this descending minor chord progression of 1, flat 7, flat 6, and your dominant 5 chord is very popular in Latin music. It's almost, well, yeah, it's basically a line cliche of sorts. This is what we call a line cliche in music. This descending minor line kind of progression is very common, very popular, to the point where it's like, it is a cliche within this kind of genre of music. And now we got to talk about the bass. So I mean, yeah, Clay Gober is basically kind of emphasizing the root notes of the descending chords, the D, the C, the B flat, and the A. So hear it? Bass has got the roots. So, and what he's doing is he's emphasizing the strong beats of Clay Ashelman's groove. So the bum 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 bum, 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3. Second time, bum 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 bum. So he's really driving the groove by accenting the strong beats of the groove that Clay Ashelman has set up on the drums, and this is how the bass and the drums are basically working together. I think Scotty is basically sort of, is he doubling Tim's part? Let me have a listen. Nope. Okay. So Scotty's got and I'm looking at his hands and his right hand. Scotty's playing the chords that the piano was doing in the beginning to basically emphasize the chord progression. So him and Clay, and so Scotty and the two Clays are basically creating the groove, the bedrock essentially for Tim to do his thing over. So Scotty's got the chords. Okay, he's got the harmony on this side. Clay Gober's got the root notes of the chord progression, and he's emphasizing the strong beats of the groove that the drums are creating. And together, they create the bed, and then the piano is there to basically accent it. And then Tim can do whatever the hell he wants to show off over the section, because that's what Tim does. Tim's the lead guitarist, but not so much in this tune as I very happily found out when listening to this. I wonder if when in the sections when, because I've already reacted to this, so I know what's going to happen. Basically, this tune is set up in a way that gives our three guitarists, Tim Henson, Scott LePage, and Steve Vai, sections to basically show off. So and each of them are in the throne, right? So, and that's whenever one of them is in the throne, it's their turn to show off. So it's the first section is for Tim to strut his stuff, to flex, right, as he likes to say. And so Tim is showing off. He's doing his thing. Clay, the two Clays, and Scott are creating the rhythm behind him. I wonder, when it's Scotty's turn, if Tim is going to switch to the rhythm guitar and play the chords so that Scotty will then have his chance to show off. And then when Steve Vai is doing his thing later on, if both of them are going to be helping to create the rhythm with the rest of the band. I'll see if my suspicion is correct. And I love that little slap bass thing that Clay does. And you can hear a lot of octaves on Tim's guitar. He's been listening to a lot of jazz or a lot of R&B. Like I've said it before, that kind of octave kind of sound really makes me think of Wes Montgomery, if any of you know who Wes Montgomery is. Because he's the guy who invented it, pretty much. That kind of whole clean octaves and jazz kind of thing, giving that kind of jazz kind of vibe. That's all going back to Wes Montgomery in the 1960s. Know your roots. It's important. But yeah, this crazy slap bass line that Clay does, and then they all kind of accent the run, the groove, the rhythm that Clay does. Check it out. Yeah, drums and bass together right there. Okay, yeah, that's pretty cool. So right before we get into Scotty's amazing guitar solo, and I'm so glad he gets a chance to shine, finally, it's not all about Tim. I love you, Tim, but it can't be about you all the time. Let's talk about how they're building here. So we're still going with the halftime kind of Latin Tresillo kind of groove, right? The bass is still doing the bum 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 bum, the accents with the drums, but the drums are getting a little bit more intricate, and so is the bass. So Clay Gober is now, instead of just playing the root notes, he's adding these little slap bass kind of descending lines in between the chords, and those strong beats. Those strong accents, and the drums are also filling in. I'd almost say that they're kind of doubling each other, the bass and the drums for these runs. Let's check it out. Here we go. Yep. Yep. So you can hear the bass doing the fills. You can hear that Tim is really focusing more on playing percussively to add to like that slappy, poppy kind of sound on the bass. But what's really cool is what the drums are doing here. So Clay Ashelman is actually basically doubling Clay Gober's crazy slap bass lines in unison with him, a lot, mostly on the snare drum and some on the kick. Check it out. Right there. Right there. Right there. It's pretty badass. Okay, Scotty's turn. I just have to point that out because it's. I love how it keeps building in intensity. Like it starts off really chill in the beginning. Then with each line descent, with each line cliche, when they're moving down the bum 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 bum, right, that whole chord progression, it gets more intense, and they build and they add to it. It's cool. And then it's going to get more intense because now we're going to go from a clean sound into a very distorted and overdriven sound, and Scotty is going to kick our asses, which I love. Scotty can kick my ass any day. So can Tim. Triplets! Oh. Okay. So this is awesome. So the riff that Tim started with, not the percussive riff, but the chill kind of R&B riff, the boom boom ba da ba ba bum ba, that one, right? That's kind of the theme of the song. In classical music, we call it a leitmotif. It's basically the theme that the whole song kind of revolves around. So Scotty is now reprising that theme, but on the electric, and he's just got this big, fat, juicy, overdriven, creamy, distorted tone, and it just, it's so good. And he starts off low, and then they do this triplet run, and then they repeat it again, and then Tim adds the same riff, I think, or Scott, maybe it's all Scotty, I can't tell because I wasn't there in the studio with them, but somebody adds the same riff just an octave up on this side, and it's just money. It's gold. It's the shit. It is the shit, man. It's like the best thing ever. And it just, then they do that smooth, like, lockstep unison triplet run with the whole band, that the whole band is like known for. These boys love their triplets. And then Clay comes in with this great drum fill. Oh my god, check this shit out. There's our theme. So like a minor pentatonic kind of run in triplets. You can hear Clay Ashelman is doing that same run on the cymbals to accent it. It's so badass. So there's the boo boo ba 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 ba, an octave up, and then you've got Scotty's got the lower guitar part. I think Tim's doing the octave. He's playing higher up. He likes to. I've noticed this thing with Polyphia where Scotty likes to play the riff down low, Tim likes to play the riff way up high, and together they create this octave kind of effect, which is just great. It's what they're known for in part. That and the triplets. But yeah. And Clay's just holding the chords on the bass. Yeah, this is a great drum fill on the toms from Clay Ashelman. What a great... Okay, yeah. So this section here is like Tim and Scott are kind of like doing the whole sort of solo together in that way that they kind of do. I hear a bit of a harmonizer on Scotty's sounds. I think there's like a third maybe above the root note for the melody that he's playing. He's using some sort of harmonizer effect. And you can see that Tim is doubling him as well, just based on the position of their hands on the fretboard. And they're doing that that crazy run together. And really, it's all about melody here. It's a very, very, very strong, very singable hook. And that's what I really like about Polyphia, is that they can flex, they can shred, cool. But I find that with the song, it's got a really strong melody line to it, which is great. Because if you can't sing along to it, and I could definitely sing along to this, to me, there's no point for the listener. This is great. It's still all about the melody with just little bits of flexes in between. Little bits of shreddy time in between to show off, which is great. Outlining the chords again. Strong notes of each chord. And what's really cool here is, check it out. There's a bit of a theme that Scott's doing where he's kind of, and I know the sound because I use this kind of lick myself. This sort of melody that he's creating is kind of based around the 9. Okay, so in the key of D, that would be E, and the flat 7. So in the key of D, that would be C. So in jazz, what a lot of jazz guitarists like to do is they like to build, like if you've got a, oh God, how would I put it? If you've got like a lick, right, or a riff, and your scale has a flat 7, a lot of jazz guitarists will exploit the intervallic relationship, by which I mean the intervallic mean intervals, so like the space, the distance between notes. So in this case, they'll exploit the big jump, okay, the 2 whole step jump between the 9, which is a whole step above your root, okay, your octave, and the flat 7, which is a whole step below your root, your octave. And so Scotty returns to this sound when he's creating the melody over each chord. I'll point it out to you. Check it out. There. Again. Okay, now it's Scotty's turn to shine. Ooh. Okay, yeah. So, again, he's just blowing over this descending minor chord progression. This is kind of what they're doing. Very different from what Tim was doing. I hear more harmony, less percussiveness, less focus on rhythm and harmonics, what Tim was doing. Scotty seems to focus more on harmony and chords in his playing. There's a little bit of dissonance here. I hear some diminished runs, which are really cool. I'll point them out. And yeah. There's the dissonance. He's sort of exploiting a little bit of semitone dissonance in between each chord in the progression, and he's moving sort of things around. He also tends to he really likes lower tunings. I think this tune is in drop D, just based on the sound. I hear that low D string, and I know Scotty is a big fan of lower tuned strings. So you've still got the percussiveness, but the harmony, the chords are coming out clear. Yeah, you can hear he's dropping those dissonances with each chord, and to kind of create this kind of descending, dissonant kind of feeling in his playing. It's really neat. Yeah, diminished run right over the 5 chord. That's really cool. So yeah, he's probably doing, if we're in A7, he's probably doing a run based around like C sharp diminished. Because if you look at your A7, A, C sharp, E, and G, right? Within that A7 chord, there's a C sharp diminished chord started on your 3rd, which is the C sharp. So within your larger extensions within music, like your 7th chords, there's usually a smaller chord contained within that's usually built off the 3rd of your bigger chord. So if it's A7, okay, your 3rd is C sharp. There's a diminished chord that gets built off your 3rd and your 7th chord. So in this case, it's C sharp diminished, and you can hear Scotty do basically a descending kind of diminished chord run that he does over the 5 chord, the dominant 5 chord, the A7 chord here. I'll point it out. I like that too, by the way, the accents. There. This. Getting a little bit more intricate with the rhythm. Yep, a little bit more intricate. You can hear the drums are now backing him up in unison. Just like Tim on the second go-around, he's getting a little bit more intricate with this playing. There's a little bit more focus on flexing, rhythm, but you can still hear his chord outlines very clearly. Much less still rhythmic, and you can still hear a percussiveness. But I think the big difference between Scott and Tim's playing style is Tim is more focused on the muting and the percussiveness and the harmonics. Scott is more into using percussive playing to create basically chord-based melodies, harmony, essentially. And I think this is the major difference between their playing styles. I don't know if anybody has analyzed them to this degree, but this is what I'm hearing as a player, as a musician. I'm just looking into this. You can hear Tim adding little accents on the strong beats, on the bump bump. Check it. Yeah, you can hear little Phrygian runs, harmonic minor runs throughout. That's all pretty standard for the key that we're in, and basically they're essentially, this is all based around how would we say it, like D-Aeolian, essentially, because we've got the flat 7 in the key of D, so that, yeah, it's basically D-Aeolian. That's the Aeolian mode. And a little bit of A Phrygian on your 5 chord. So this is all pretty cool. And like a little bit of D harmonic minor on the 5 chord as well, because as I said before, your Phrygian mode and your harmonic minor scale are linked. The Phrygian mode is like the Phrygian dominant mode is like the 5th mode of the harmonic minor. So there's definitely a connection. And now it's going to get even more intense. I don't know how they can be this fucking precise. Like, I just don't. And I've seen them do this shit live. Not this specific tune, but shit like it. And it's just mind-blowing. Like, especially Clay on the drums. It's like, holy fuck. Scotty's just running over the chords. Yep. Okay, so before we get into the section with Steve Vai, my suspicions were correct. If you watched him, okay, he is accenting little riffs that Scotty is doing, doubling them here and there, but for the most part, he's laying down the chords on this side. So now he's taking Scotty's place. When Scotty was creating the harmony, the chords to help accent what the rhythm section the two Clays are doing, Tim is now taking that role. So my suspicions were correct. Scotty is basically doing a lot of shredding, but there's a lot of melody lines that Tim and Scott do kind of in between. It's kind of like they've got like a flex. Basically a crazy run. And then they'll do like a melody line, like one of their Polyphia licks that they're famous for. And I've heard Polyphia's music enough times that I'm like, oh yeah, they like these licks. I've heard them in other tunes by them. Every guitarist has a vocabulary. I'm starting to familiarize myself with Tim and Scott's vocabulary as guitar players, licks and runs that they love to do, and they throw in a lot of songs because, repetition is the mother of invention. So check it. Here we go. Crazy shredding. The boom, 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 boom. That's your strong melody. And they're going to kind of riff off that again, kind of repeat the same kind of idea to get it in the listener's ear a little bit stronger. Crazy legato stuff from Scott. Nice harmonies there, actually. Yeah. So the boom, 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 and then it's a call and response. So check it out. That's the call. That's the response. Throughout this whole thing, Scott is basically doing crazy runs. He's still outlining the chord tones for each chord, which is really cool and really impressive. What I love is what Clay Ashelman is doing, and I was wrong. He's not wearing a bathrobe. I thought he was when I reacted to this initially, but he still looks badass. He's like the drummer Jesus, right? He looks like Jesus. He looks like white Jesus, I should say. Not real Jesus, but he's basically drummer white Jesus. But because Jesus wasn't white. We all know that. But, Clay is basically just, if you listen to him, what he's really doing here on the drums is you hear him accent, okay, the boom, 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 ba, the strong beats that the bass and the guitar are doing, the rhythm section is doing together, and then at the same time, with his right hand on his hi-hat, he's actually doubling a lot of the crazy rhythms that Scott is doing in his solo. This is so cool. Check the drums out. Not yet. I'll point it out. Here. Hear that with the hi-hat, the boom, 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 boom. But Clay is actually doing 30-second notes. Check it. That's so precise. Yeah, that's amazing. The fact that he's able to get those rhythms so precise, and it's just so tight. It is so tight. Okay, Steve's bit. back to the original chill kind of riff. Ah, yeah, okay. So they've thrown in another triplet run here, much like they did when Scott started off the second section. Again, the theme has come up. They're now throwing in another triplet run in between, but this time they're playing it clean and smooth. Here's Steve. Okay. Like, it's Steve fucking Vai, everybody. Like, what more do you want? I cannot tell, because I know Steve has spent a lot of time doing this sort of pre-bend string pull-off technique, which is apparently very difficult to do. As a slide guitarist, as a lap steel player, I wouldn't know, but apparently it's quite difficult. You can hear some harmonics. I hear multiple guitars on both sides, so the way they've mixed this is like, it's panned and trippy like crazy. It's very Hendrixy to my ears, the way the Steve's lead guitar has been mixed. You can hear he's adding a lot of harmonics, and what I can't tell if he's doing all of this live in one take, or if he's done some overdubs. And I mean, if he has done some overdubs, fair enough. Not even Steve Vai can be superhuman. I mean, he can get close to it, but I wonder though. Let me look at his hands again. Oh. No, it looks like he's getting the... No, he's doing all that live. Okay, this is fucking hell. This is impressive. This is impressive. Just the way they've mixed it. But essentially... let me see if I can actually break down what his hands are doing. Okay, so there, he picks a harmonic. There. Again. Here he's got the bend. Yeah, he's doing all that live. That's incredible. There's our leitmotif, our theme. You can hear some synths, some pads coming in now to build up the atmosphere and the harmony. Almost like a choir kind of sound. This is just incredible. Oh, hold on. Tim did a really nice little octave run there. There's a little overdub on this side. I gotta point this out. It's beautiful. That. Okay, yeah, so the groove has changed now. For Steve's solo here. And just, oh my god. And really, there's actually a big contrast in terms of what Steve is doing. He's more focused on melody. Way more focused on melody and making the guitar sing and speak and, say something. I commented on my original reaction video that it sounds like an alien were like singing through his guitar, and it sounds like that because his tone is so weird and wonderful and out there, and I love it. It's very different. It's Steve fucking Vai. But the drums, okay, we've now gone from like a Latin rhythm to a march kind of rhythm on the snare. Check it out. Halftime kind of march rhythm. Okay, before we get into it, before I start taking apart the solo, I gotta talk about what's going on behind it. Okay, so the chord progression has changed slightly. There's an added 4 chord, so in this case a G, and I don't think they're doing the line cliche anymore. So I'm gonna give it a listen, see if I can tell what's going on. There's a march going on. The bass is just holding the root note, just one note, to kind of add to the heaviness that the pads are and the atmosphere that the pads are providing. You can hear the horns. Some of you all told me that brass tracks are the group that's responsible for the horns. They're great. You can hear the horns accent some of the drum line, the lines that the snare drum is doing with the march rhythm. It's pretty cool. But I'm gonna see if I can get the harmony that's going on underneath what Steve is doing. And once I've got the harmony kind of figured out, I'm going to use my ears to the best of my ability. Admittedly, I am not great at this. I think there's an added 4 chord in here. So I'll see if I can figure out what's going on here. One. That's the floor. 7. No. Okay, I see what's going on here. So I think they're extending the build up to the 5 by a little bit, because I hear 4 to 5, it going up instead of down to the 5. So if I'm hearing this correctly, I think the chords are one, flat 7, flat 6, 4, 5. Back to the 1. Could be wrong on that. My ears aren't that great, but there's definitely a 4 chord in there somewhere. Point is, they've changed the harmony up slightly, just ever so slightly for Steve to solo over, and it gives the tune some variety, which is nice. It's not the same chord progression throughout. So, okay, now that I've figured out what the rhythm section is doing underneath, let me see if I can take apart the soul and try to speak to at least somewhat what Steve is doing. I mean, he's such a master at his instrument. Yeah, so this is really interesting. He's got some harmonies. I hear some harmony overdubs that he's done on this side, but he's got a theme going on here with this solo. So he does all these weird whammy bar pull-offs and bends that he's known for to create this kind of alien, the singing alien kind of sound, as I like to think of it. Very long, stretched out notes, but his theme is wah, 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 and he kind of builds on this. Check it out. Yep. Yeah, he's taken this kind of theme, this leitmotif that he started with the solo, and he starts on the lowest octave he can on his guitar, and he's basically doing a variation on that theme going up in octaves. Okay, to start. And it's just a melody. He's really focused on the melody, the vibrato, and really making you feel something with his guitar. It's philosophically, it's very different from what Tim and Scott are doing, because they come from different generations, and I think the older generations of guitar players, not to say that Steve Vai can't shred, of course he can, but I've noticed this, as you get older as a musician, myself included, It's less about showing off, it's less about flexing, it's less about shredding, and more about crafting a melody that the audience can connect to, that you and the audience can connect to together, right? And Steve is really doing that here, masterfully. He's really focusing on bends, vibrato, phrasing, and he's just, with each weird alien-sounding kind of bend, he's really dragging the bend out to get as much emotion out of his guitar as possible. It's masterful, really. It's a great use of space. He could be shredding the fuck out of this, 1,000 notes per second, like, say, Eddie Van Halen would, but that's not his game. That's not what he's about here. And you can hear at the end of each little phrase, he adds a harmony. Yeah, so ba-ba-la, ba-ba-lum, ba-ba-lum, ba-ba-lum. So there, ba, bum, boom, boom, ba, boom, boom, boom. Those are your strong notes, your chord tones, the points that you want to focus on in each chord. So Steve, just like Tim and Scott, is outlining the chord progression, and he's focusing on those strong chord tones in creating this melody. And he's got the weird bends, and he's milking it, and he's making it sound as weird and alien as he possibly can. But the ba-ba-dum, ba-ba-dum, he's kind of taking, that's his theme, that's his leitmotif, and then he's going to move it down with each chord, or up with each chord. He's basically going to move it around with each chord in the progression. And he's really focusing on creating a theme, a musical kind of theme here. Much like how an orchestra in, say, classical music would be creating a theme that, say, the strings or the horns, a melody that they would play over top the chords that the rest of the orchestra would be making. Same deal here, except it's being done with a 5-piece band instead of like a 30 to 40 piece orchestra. But basically similar sort of philosophical idea, musically speaking. Oh my god, this is great. I really love how he saves the flex right for the end to get you, right, just before it goes back to the next go round in the progression to build tension, right? He's not training his ass off here. He's milking every note that he possibly can. Possibly can, to create tension. And it's just like with each note, each bend, each vibrato that he's coaxing out and making the notes as long as possible, it just builds even more and more tension until finally he lets loose with like this kind of like, it's almost like a dubstep kind of thing, right? That he does at the end, and it's so cool. This little sweep that he does with like the harmonic. It's awesome. And in the background, I want to point out what the drums are doing. So the hi-hat over here on my right side, Clay is doubling the rhythm on the hi-hat that the snare is doing, the march rhythm. It almost sounds like he's doing kind of like an 808 hip-hop kind of rhythm, but it pairs perfectly with the march. Also, you can hear the horns from Brass Tracks doubling what the snare is doing on this side in little spots. I just want to give a note to the arrangement. Build that tension. He's building that theme now. Moving with the chords. Yeah, that what he's doing there, and he's sliding it around, and he's doing all these weird bends. That's all building tension. Like somebody like Eddie Van Halen would probably be shredding his ass off here. Not Steve, and maybe even a younger Steve Vai would be shredding his ass off here. But he doesn't need to now. He's gotten to the point in his career where he doesn't need to show off anymore. And really, maybe this is the whole point of the name of the tune, Ego Death. It's not about showing off. It's not about flexing. It's really interesting. If I think about it philosophically here for a second, everybody is, when they sit in that throne, it's their turn to show their flex, right? Their ego. And Tim and Scott do it. And then Steve comes up, and you're expecting him to shred his ass off because, yeah, it's Steve fucking Vai. But he doesn't. He serves the song. Ego death. It's not about him. It's not about his ego. You would expect it to be because it's Steve fucking Vai, and oh my god, it's Steve fucking Vai. But no, Steve is really showing his maturity as a musician, his growth as a musician, by really creating tension, focusing on melody, and really serving the song. And only flexing were absolutely necessary to just kind of give you goosebumps as a listener, like with the dubstep thing that he does at the end here. I love this. Yeah, he's doing all of that live, and it's so cool. But he saves that right for the end after he's built up all this tension. We're at the peak, we're at the mountaintop, and then bam, and you're just like, oh, let me hear that again. Let's hear that again. Here we go. Okay. All right. So, let's talk about what's going on behind him here. So, that march, that kind of combination of like the hip-hop 808 pattern, hi-hat pattern that you're on this side in the march. Now we've gone to a total halftime hip-hop groove. We're in like total hip-hop 808 territory in terms of the groove that Clay is making on the drums. You can hear a lot of synths. You can hear some keyboards doing eighth notes. In the background, you can hear the horns accenting it. Lots of synths. And definitely, as I suspected, you can tell that Tim and Scott are just playing the chords behind Steve to support him. So my suspicions of whoever is kind of given the chance to shine, the rest of the band are going to be support. And only flexing were absolutely necessary in order to sort of accent what Steve is doing. Again, it's about serving the song. Ego death. It's not about showing off. Even though it kind of seems like it. It really isn't. Yeah, so that he starts off with this beautiful bend and vibrato and this melody, and you can actually hear the brass double it on this side. The guys from Brass Tracks are actually doubling parts of his melodic lines for his solo, which is really cool. There. Yeah, so really, again, he's all about melody and bending and creating tension And he only saves the crazy little run for the very end, for the 5 chord at the end of the progression. Because that's the most natural point to show off, is over your 5 chord, right? Because your 5 chord is your leading chord. It helps to create the tension because you want to go back to your 1, your D minor in this case. So when he's over that A7 chord, that's when he does his little flex. Similar to what, and Tim and Scott are basically doing the same thing. It's the most natural place to do it. It makes the most sense to do it there. But all throughout, he's focusing on bends, phrasing, melody, and creating tension and experience for the listener. And it's just gorgeous. Like, the way he bends and the way he phrases his vibrato is just beautiful. Like, just that first note where he sweeps up to it. Like, just right there is just... That's a great way to come in. Yeah, and you can hear he's playing modally over each chord. So whenever he does a little bit of a scale run to accent the chord tones that he's creating through his melody, he's actually thinking he's doing the scale in conjunction with whatever chord he's on. So he's thinking modally here, by which I mean with each chord you play, there's going to be a corresponding scale. And so when you switch scales like that, that's what we call modal playing, because you're playing in different modes for the key that you're in. Because each chord of the key has a corresponding scale, which is basically a mode or a variation off of your tonic key, in this case D minor. But it's basically D Aeolian with the notes rearranged for each chord. Basically, that's basically modes in a nutshell. Is like if we take D Aeolian, okay, which is the home scale that we're basing off of our 1 chord here. So notes of that are D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B flat, C, and D. I'm sorry, there we go. Right. And then we were to say for the 4 chord, right, if we were starting on G, you could rearrange those notes so that you're starting on G. And then, essentially, you get G Dorian. G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F, and G. So you can take the same notes for a scale, but then rearrange them in a different order depending on what chord you're playing. That's called modal playing. That's what Steve Vai is doing here. So whatever chord he's landing on, he's either playing chord tones for that chord, or he's playing a corresponding scale or mode which matches with the chord that still fits within the overall key. I'm getting very nerdy and technical here, and very, like, this is all music theory, but this is essentially what Steve is doing, and any player of this level would be doing the same. I try to do the same when I try to play, and trust me, it's hard. I'm not at Steve's level. I've been playing professionally for over a decade at this point, and I still struggle with shit like this. Just being honest about it. For people like Tim and Scott and Steve, it comes naturally. Others like myself, we gotta work on it. I love all these bends and the vibrato stuff and the whammy bar stuff that he's doing. Yeah, he's really playing with pinch harmonics here. Really to start at pinch harmonics to kind of add to that alien kind of vibe that he's creating with his guitar. Again, mostly focused on the bends, the melody, the vibrato, the phrasing, and holding notes, creating tension, but now he's starting to shred a little bit more. He's flexing just a little bit more to add just enough more tension because we're climaxing now. We're getting to the climax of the tune, right? And this is what he's doing. Nice little run there. A little bit of blues phrasing. Wah, 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 wah. He did this phrase in the last progression. It's kind of a theme that he's building off of. With the whammy bar. He repeats it again the octave up. He's creating a theme with his melodies. Same melody the octave up. Yeah, so, like, I love this bit here where it's like, we're in, like, total dubstep mode or whatever. It's this halftime electronic kind of groove. You can hear the bum ba da dum ba da dum ba da da. The synths are kind of creating this 16th note kind of gallop thing going on. And, you know, Steve just lays out. He just lets the groove be the groove for a few bars, which is so cool. Like, again, ego death. He could be shredding over this bit. But instead, he lets the band speak for itself, and he doesn't play. Sometimes it's about the notes that you don't play, and the space and the breath that you create by not playing. And it takes a really long time to get to that point where you as a player can just let go and let the music breathe. I'm not there. Hope to be there in 10 years or so. I'm not there yet. I still kind of got to get my ego out of my playing, you know? But I'm glad Steve is there. And I think Tim and Scott will get there eventually. But I just love how he just gives the band a moment to shine here. And it's just all about the groove that they're creating together. Yeah. So then you've got all three of them at the very end. And And what's really neat about this, right, is it sounds to the untrained ear, to the average listener, to the non-musician's ear, that they're shredding and that it's about ego. But really it isn't. And I'll show you why. What Tim and Scott and Steve are all doing here is they're creating a 3-part harmony. And they're playing so that's the theme, that's the rhythmic theme that they're going with, and they're moving that in accordance with each chord in the progression. Again, they're following the chord progression, and they're creating a melody, a theme. And so each of them are now, and yeah, when the camera pans around, it looks like they're soloing their asses off, and that they're, shredding. It's all about their ego. But it isn't, because if you listen musically, they're all supporting each other to create this lovely, gorgeous 3-part harmony with their guitars. And you can tell by looking at their hands and where they're playing on the fretboard that they've all got a harmony part. And so they're ending, again, by creating a theme. Whereas, how do I put this? Whereas, Tim was creating a theme in his section. Scott was creating a theme with his section. Steve was creating a theme with his section. Now they're all creating a theme together and supporting each other and supporting the tune. And it's not about them anymore. It's about the song and the music and the death of all their egos. And I think that's why this tune is called Ego Death. That's my thesis. I'm resting on it. I'll point out what they're doing. Here we go. Hear that? So it starts off with Steve Vai. Yeah, Steve does this little run. Very impressive run. He starts it off. That little descending run. Yeah, so you hear how you're going ba 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 ba. That's the melody. It's a 3-part harmony part. And they're all supporting each other when they play it. One more time. This is incredible. Okay, so it seems, based on what I'm seeing, based on their hand positions on the fretboard, for that 3-part harmony, Steve has the lower part of the harmony, Scotty's got the middle, and Tim, of course, has the upper, because he loves playing the upper harmonies. One more time. Watch their hands. You can all see them creating this wonderful 3-part harmony part together with just 3 of the greatest guitarists in the world. This is one of the best guitar collaborations, musical collaborations. This is legendary. Like, come on. This is fucking legendary. And I love how, they could have just come together and let Steve do his thing and show off. But instead he comes in and they craft this beautiful song together. Like, this is a masterclass in harmony and songwriting and just, oh my God. Chills. But check it. They've all got a different harmony part. Steve's got the low bit. Scott's got the middle part. Tim's got the upper part of the harmony. Check it. Here we go. See, Tim's up high. Scott's in the middle. Steve's down low. I like that little the little harmonic thing. And then there they all are just looking badass. And, I like all the little synth things that are happening here. I should point out that when I see Steve has the low part, what's really crucial about that is probably the low part is probably the melody based on the root. And then I would guess that Scotty's middle part is probably the third, the harmony in thirds, and Tim's part is probably like the fifth on the very top. I can't quite tell for sure, but that's what I'd suspect. Very love all the little Roman synths. Very chill. Now our trumpet player. By the way, thank you to so many of you for pointing out that this man's name is Ivan Jackson. I do not know why he isn't credited here in the featuring. He should be. For me, his trumpet tune just, it's the cherry. It's the cherry at the end, on top. And he's going to play our melody again, our theme, our leitmotif. So that we return to the same theme that it starts with. And that's the same melody that Tim and Scott and the whole band have been playing throughout the whole thing. So it starts with that theme. It ends with that theme. That theme is created throughout. That theme is the heart of the song. It's the leitmotif. It's the theme that the whole song revolves around. That and the descending 1 flat 7 flat 6 dominant 5 chord progression. It's basically riffing off a couple of really simple themes and building off them, and basically flexing here and there, but really showing what the band can do as a unit, and really supporting the song and crafting this beautiful piece of music together. 5 of the best musicians in the whole world. What a treat. And what a legendary, legendary, legendary collaboration. Something like this only comes across, it only happens once in a lifetime. Glad it happened in my lifetime. This is like, man, this is like for, I don't know, for like millennials and like me and Gen Zers, and I guess Gen Alpha, this is like our version of, like, I don't know, Hendrix playing at Woodstock. This is incredible. Beautiful piece of music, beautiful work, and I love how they can just let go of their egos and serve the song. It's in the title. That's it. I know this took a really long time, but I'm glad that you all sat through it with me, and that we gave this song the attention that it deserves, and just pointing out what a beautifully crafted piece of music this is overall. All right, I'm done. Don't know when I'll do another Polyphia tune next. I'll think about it, but I'm going to get to some other stuff that's been on the back of my mind. So please stick around and check that out. Don't just come and react to my Polyphia, don't come for my Polyphia reactions. I do a whole bunch of other bands here. So come check it out. Expose yourself to different kinds of music. That's what it's all about. And again, if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button below. Ring the bell to get notified when I post a new video. Give a thumbs up, a like, leave a comment. Let me know what you think of this amazing composition. This beautiful, beautiful, beautiful... It's a masterpiece. This is a masterpiece of music. And I'll see you all next time. And if you want to support the channel, I'll provide links to my Bandcamp if you want to get my music, and my PayPal if you want to get me a coffee or anything like that. And just you all showing up here and supporting me, that means a lot. So thank you all, and I'll see you all next week with, I don't know, we'll see. We'll see what I'm going to be here for next week. I have an idea, but I want it to be a surprise. So I'll see you all next Monday, and take care. Bye-bye. Fucking perfect. Impeccable. I wish I could play as good as those guys. Yeah, maybe one day I will.